Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series. It is the 22nd of November, 2025. So coming up on the American holiday of Thanksgiving. But I expect to pretty much stick to the same schedule next week as far as the videos are concerned. We are doing still the long diary entry of the 19th of October 1917, which was a Thursday in Tehran, of course, at the English mission. And in the first part of this long diary entry, Dmitri is writing primarily as an observer of events, and he will be switching to the personal later at the end of the long diary entry, which is usually the way he organized things. So in the last section of this long diary entry, he had gotten some news from Baku. There were two people coming from Baku. One was an officer in the Persian cavalry, the Persian Cossack brigade, by the name of Verba, and he was in Baku for a 2-week holiday. The other one was in Tehran for a holiday, the English consul to Baku, by the name of E. MacDonald, and he had more to say than Verba about what he himself was observing with the Soviets, as he perceived it at that time, strongly in charge of Baku, and inflation being sky high, and giving Dmitri his opinion of the Russian people and the idea that they were able to deal with freedom in a way other than just thinking of it as license to do whatever you wanted. So Dmitri seems to have shared that opinion. So now we're going on, we're expanding our view and talking about what's going on in the war. So let's get started with that. Military affairs haven't changed lately, except that the Gulf of Riga is in the hands of the Germans, who also possess Moonsund. The role of our fleet is now exclusively guarding the Gulf of Finland and the approaches to the capital by sea. How well the fleet will be able to execute this task is an open question for the time being. Our inactivity on the rest of our front has already borne concrete fruit. To wit, the Austrians have hurled a mass of troops at the Italian front, and there struck such a swift and powerful blow that it threatens to become a huge catastrophe for the Italian army. According to the latest official information, Italy has lost more than 1,000 guns in its entire Second Army. Of course, these material losses have been matched by territorial losses because the foe has pushed them back from all their positions and already moved beyond the Italian border. This catastrophe could change the shape of the campaign, in my opinion. Italian morale has naturally plummeted, and they will probably even be prepared to make peace, the more so since the war is far from popular with them. There is even a threat of revolution there and the overthrow of the king. But of course, that's just a guess. What is far more likely and even almost certain is that even if Italy continues to fight over the course of several months, it will have to lick its wounds, and that will give the Germans and Austrians a chance to hurl troops against the French and English. Marling takes a very dark view of things. So, this is pretty accurate information, and Dmitri seems to have done quite well as far as forming a clear view of what was going on in the war. And as we know, he was reading every newspaper he could get his hands on, talking to people like Verba and MacDonald and other people like Filipov, who were coming into Tehran with news from Russia and from the Russian Empire. He also was constantly with diplomats, Russian diplomats, English diplomats, so he was getting their view of things. So it's pretty, in a time when information could be hard to come by, accurate information, he's actually doing well. So he's referring to begin with, he's talking about the threat to Petrograd from the Germans, who were coming in by the sea route through, well, they'd already, as he says, they'd already taken the Gulf of Riga and the Estonian islands there, and now they were trying to take the Gulf of Finland, which would bring them even closer to Petrograd. So this was a big concern. Dmitri talked about it before, and yeah, he's very doubtful about whether the fleet will be able to prevent this. They weren't able to prevent the taking of the Gulf of Riga in October, I believe, in what the Germans called Operation Albion for some reason that is unknown to me. And now he's expanding into the bigger issue, which is what's going on the Western Front with what he's referring to as the Battle of Caporetto, which took place in October and November in, well, the Italian collapse, basically, more or less collapse, which took place in October and November. This is the 19th of November of October, old style, so it would have been 13 days later on the Gregorian calendar. So this was going on, and again, his information is accurate. They had lost around 1,000 guns, and it was absolutely disastrous for them. A massive Austro-German breakthrough against Italian forces. He was wrong about Victor Emmanuel, about there being a revolution. There was not. Victor Emmanuel stayed in place until, I think, during the Second World War. What else did I want to talk about? Yeah, so, you know, he's, to a certain extent, he's blaming Russia for this, and talking about the possibility that the Italians will make a separate peace with the Central Powers, which would be very bad at this stage in the war for the Allies. But, you know, it's ironic, because Italy would not make a separate peace. It would stay in the war. And it was Russia, of course, under the Bolsheviks, that would make a second peace, or a separate peace with the Central Powers. And we'll see how Dmitri responds to that, because it's coming up. You know, at least the Bolshevik takeover is coming up. Okay. What else? Then the concluding sentence, Sir Charles takes a very dark view of things. Well, you know, for the Allies, yeah, things are not looking good at this point. So what do we have next time? Well, next time we have quite an interesting transition into a topic that caused Dmitri a lot of personal bitterness, and that was England itself. So why would he feel bitter about England? Because he saw England as the primary rival of Russia going into the future. And like a lot of Russians, he saw he believed the English attitude toward Russia and towards the Russian people was that they're just a lot of Asiatic barbarians, and that the revolution was a good thing. It represented progress. And so he has a lot of negative things to say. You could even say nasty things to say about England at this point, even though he's living more or less at the expense of the English government at this particular time. But he's writing, you know, from what I assume was a fairly widespread Russian view. And even there in Persia, with the great game, with the rivalry between Russia and England. So Yeah, come back for that. Really interesting stuff. I think if you are British, Dmitri doesn't refer ever really to Great Britain. It's always to England, unless he's talking separately about Ireland, for instance, or Scotland. Or, yeah, anyway, if you are English, then, brace yourself. And whether you are or are not English, I hope to see you then.